make us live, Marla, are we good?
Thanks, dear.
All right, 7 o'clock, I'll call the October Kickapoo Area School Board meeting to order. And we'll kick things off with roll call.
Earl Wallace.
Here.
Isaac Wallace.
Here.
Rich Deeds.
Here.
Peggy McCormick.
Here.
Bo Schrader.
Here.
And Scott Walter.
Here. Item 2, affirmation of the proof of publication of the agenda. That's you, Kim.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Kimberly Johnson, hereby certify that notice of the Kickapoo regular school board meeting was caused to be published in the Epitaph News and posted on billboards on the following places on 10/2, the Kickapoo K-12 school building, Citizens First Bank, and Viola Post Office.
Thank you. Item 3, I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Motion by Earl, second by Bo. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Audience visitors or board members? I don't know if we had anybody, any board members, no members of the public, I guess, called in, but I had one thing I was going to throw out there. The new insurance plan, as part of the negotiations committee, I was in a number of meetings where we talked about that, and at one point I had a really solid understanding of what this new path forward with regards to healthcare was about. But as I've thought back on it, that understanding, maybe it's just advancing age, I don't know, has dwindled a bit. So I wouldn't mind a little, you know, like we did last month, educational session where we talk about what this plan is, how it functions, why it's better, what the goals are, etc. If we could do that. I don't know if anybody else, maybe I'm the only one that doesn't have a concrete understanding of that, but it's, of course, really important to our staff, and I'd like to make sure we're making good decisions. It means we got to understand what this is all about. Anybody else? Reminder of the annual meeting coming up, the 25th? Okay. All right, we'll move on then to expense vouchers and receipts.
Not a lot, just a couple questions on GFL Environmental, which is the way, used to be Southwest Waste. When they took out bleachers or desks and that, and got new ones, they had to have dumpsters because they don't go into our compactor, so that's what that was from. And then I think in P-cards, what Rockwell for Tina was a washer and dryer in the kitchen. We never ever had one there, and we always took them home to get them towels and everything washed, so got a washer and dryer for in there, so we don't have to do that anymore. And that is, that's that, what we looked at.
Any other questions, comments? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve this month's expense vouchers and receipts.
I'll make that motion. Trying to second it.
Motion by Isaac, second by Earl to approve. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We then have a consent agenda with minutes from our September meeting, some early graduation requests, the 23-24 conference dues, 23-24 basketball officials pay, donations, and field trips. Everybody okay with those things being voted on under the consent agenda? If so, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. I can second it.
Motion by Isaac, second by Earl to approve the consent agenda.
Rich.
I'm sorry, Rich, to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda stands approved. Moving on then to the action agenda, beginning with item 7A, bleacher wheel replacement. And you saw a couple bids, I think, in the packet.
We did, and these are the older bleacher wheels, and so they were plastic and chipping off and ruining the gym floor.
This is the upstairs gym?
Yeah, the new gym.
Or the
So,
Downstairs gym?
no, upstairs on the bleachers, yeah. So yeah, we did have 2 bids. And the lesser of the bids here, the 62, was able to come in the very next day. So it's completed and done, and we're ready to roll with that gym now.
So we went with the cheaper bid, is what you're saying?
Yes, yeah.
Is that who put our bleachers in up there?
What's
Yeah.
that?
Is that who put our bleachers in up there to start with anyway? Your,
No, I don't think they put the bleachers in. I don't know who put the bleachers in, to be honest with you. Do you, Aaron?
I'm not sure.
no, we've had them here to repair bleachers, and I think.
They've done other stuff before.
And I know the name, that's just,
So the work's been done, right?
The work's been
Really
done
good.
and the bleachers are back and he's, yeah.
So I don't-
It was good to try to get in and get this out of the gym so it didn't ruin the floor. We had to do it. And then it was also kind of holding up some of the game volleyball and things that we're needing to.
So I don't know if there's a need to vote on this. It's
I mean, it's already been done.
been done, so.
Somebody made a decision, so.
Yeah, a good decision, certainly. Very good, let's just move on then, if that's all right. 7B, pool and multi-purpose room rental prices, and again, there was an insertion in the packet. I assume Anna put these together?
Yes.
Yeah, Ann and I talked after the last meeting, just kind of what we thought would make sense based on conversation and situation, and it's kind of what we thought would make the most sense.
Yeah, this all made good sense to me. It simplifies things as well as.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the new pool and multi-purpose room rental.
I'll make a motion to approve the new pool and purpose room pricing.
I'll second it.
Motion by Earl, second by Rich to approve those prices. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Feeling a lot of pressure to move quickly now that I hear the mail boards, we have 28-minute meetings.
27, okay.
Packer game was on.
All right, item 7C then, the 23-24 preliminary budget. And again, it's, you see an overview in your packet.
It's towards the very end.
What's that?
It's right towards the end of your packet. So this has been revamped, because we have some figures now that we didn't have before. We have our third Friday count, we have our equalized valuation. We're still waiting for our final aid certification numbers, which are supposed to come out this Friday. Once we have that, then we will know for certain what we're getting for aid, how much we'll have to levy. But these are very close. Sandy and I worked together on the Baird model to get our aid certification numbers, and all the other numbers just as close as we could without that final piece of the puzzle. So I don't think you'll see much change at all between this and what you will approve, hopefully approve at the annual meeting, or after the annual meeting. So I don't know if everybody's reviewed it, but I can kind of go over it real quick. Or you
Just,
ask questions.
there's a couple of attachments.
So the one that's not in color is the budget, and then the one after it is our quarterly budget report that I provide every quarter.
Okay, so you're
And we'll touch
talking,
on that later.
okay.
Yeah. So it's a balanced budget, meaning that the revenues and the expenditures will match, so we won't dip into fund balance. And Our money comes from multiple sources, local sources, state sources, federal sources. Some of the local sources, obviously the big one would be our taxes, our property taxes. And also like entry fees for athletics, equipment disposal, like if we sell a bus, things of that nature. Our other school districts within Wisconsin, which is that third section, that big number sitting in there, that's open enrollment and co-op sports payments that we receive. So it'd be the payments that come in from other schools to us for all our open enrolled students, and then the payments that come in from Lafarge for our co-op sports program for their share.
So that's line 340 there?
Yes, 340.
Can I just ask where the corollary number is, the amount we're paying out?
Yep.
for-
It'll be, nope, it's on the next page, I believe. Yes, it's on the next page, about 2/3 of the way down in the expenditures on non-program transactions, under the 430,000. That's our open enrolled L payments.
Okay.
It's roughly half of what we get in for open enrollment. On the front page then, if we go to the next section, the intermediate sources, that transit of aids 510, that's our Carl Perkins grant. State sources, 610, those are categorical aids like for pupil, transportation, and library aids. And then the 620 is our state aid, that's our general aid that we'll find out our permanent number, or our final number this Friday. But that is the number that the Baird Mile is giving us after Sandy and I went through it with fine tooth comb based on things like our enrollments and our property valuation. And then the 630, the DPI special projects grants, those are small, but they're educator effectiveness and then our CTE grant payments.
Okay, sorry. A few months back, Angie and maybe Katie came in and talked about a mental health grant they had applied for. That was pretty sizable.
It didn't,
They
they
didn't-
changed it.
Yeah.
The
Actually-
state didn't offer it.
Oh, okay.
They
So we
broke it
didn't-
down, yeah.
Okay.
And then the 650 is our SAVE grant. That's something we get every year. The amount would vary. 660 is our PILT payments. Those are payments in lieu of taxes that we receive for properties that we don't receive, like residential property taxes for. Government-owned lands, I believe is what those are for. In the next section, federal sources, the significant ones down there are the 730s and the 750s, and those are grants. ESSER, Title II, Title IV, Title I. The 780, those would be prior year Medicaid payments. When we get Medicaid payments for providing school-based services to students that need special services. And then once they reconcile and audit, they end up typically sending us a small payment the next year for prior year expenditures, and those go into Fund 10. The ones we receive during the year for the current year go to our Fund 27, which is special education. And then 790 is the REAP grant, which is a small federal grant. Other financing sources, you don't see much here, but those would be like capital sales, when you sell big equipment. Other revenues, I should have my glasses on. 960 adjustments. Typically every year we get a dividend back from workman's comp insurance, so that would be there along with, so last year it was kind of high because we had 2 claims on a traverse for deer damage, and so the insurance proceeds would also fall into that category. And then the 990 miscellaneous, those are WIA reimbursements, which they're like travel reimbursements that we get when our teams go to WIA events. We get a little check back. Then down in expenditures, we have instruction, and you can see that's a very large chunk of the budget right there. And that is because that's teacher salaries, and fringe, basically. And the different numbers on the side just indicate what they teach. The 110s, elementary, 120, middle school, high school, 130. The rest of them are pretty self-explanatory. Support services. Those are pretty self-explanatory, but a lot of that also comes in the form of salaries and benefits for staff. Non-program transactions in the next section, that 410, that is our transfer to Fund 27 that we're anticipating, because our Fund 27 has to balance to zero at the end of the year. So whatever isn't covered, whatever expenditures are not covered by spec ed, state categorical aid, or federal revenues like IDEA funds, or Medicaid payments, we then have to cover out of our general fund, and that's our anticipated amount for this year. The 430s below it, those are, again, our open enrollment out payment. The next section is special project funds. We don't use 23 and 29, we use that Fund 21. And Fund 21 is our Griffin money, donations to the school, scholarships, and also our student activity accounts. So those revenues and expenditures can really vary depending on what the student activities are doing, and also what kind of donations the school receives in a given year. So that one's kind of a guessing game as to revenues and expenses, but we predict as close as we can based on what we know and expect. Special education, again, you'll see our beginning fund balance and ending fund balance are going to be zero because it has to be at the end of the year. The revenues that you see, the 100 transfers in, that's that same transfer that is an expenditure in Fund 10 that covers the gap. On the next page, we just have some other small sources of revenue, but our big source right there is our 610 state aid, categorical spec ed aid. And then we have our federal sources, mainly IDEA and Medicaid payments that we receive from the feds. And down in the expenditures, that is mostly comprised of salaries and benefits, the 150,000, also their classroom supplies for special needs teachers. And then support sources would be like school psych, transportation costs for special ed transportation, just those other things that don't really fit in under instruction that affect special education. And the next page, under non-program transactions, the big one there is the 430,000, and those are payments for alternative educational settings. Debt service, that would be our bond payment for the energy efficiency project and also the pool project. So those are amounts that we levy for, and then we pay the bills, and that's all we have in there. As far as I know, we don't have any capital projects planned for this year, so there's nothing really in there except for a little bit of revenue for anticipated interest income on the balances that are sitting in our Fund 46 for future projects. The food service fund, it's basically salaries, fringe, food, and then the revenues that come back from the feds for that, and a little bit from the state. Community service fund, our Fund 80. Our revenues there come from pool rental, pool fees. Those are pretty much our only revenues there unless we levy for extra money in that, which we can do. I don't know that we need to at this point. It's something we might have to do in the future. And the costs coming out of there are pool supervisor pay and fringe, along with our payment for the trap team and a few other miscellaneous things that come up during the year. That was a lot real quick, so if you have any questions, hit me with them.
Oh, good rundown.
So like our little stair project up front, where's that funded from?
Which one?
Like our stair replacement that we,
The cement.
That's coming out of general fund,
just general fund?
yeah. So that would be in that first big section. And that would come in under support services. because the 250,000s, which say business administration, which is a little misleading, that's everything that has to do with transportation, fiscal management, like my salary, custodial and maintenance expenses, everything from salaries to dumpster rentals to toilet paper and stuff replacement. It can be funded elsewhere, but this time it was funded out of fund. It could be something that you could potentially use Fund 46 for, or Fund 21 Griffin money. But- So sometimes you have options.
There was some conversation around just putting together a full list of the capital projects kind of in the next, 5 years, just say, and looking ahead at some of that stuff, so we just get less surprises, I guess, per se. You know, same thing. I think the next year over was identified as something as a future need, and I'm sure there's others like that as well. So,
That's a really good point, not to derail us, because I know we're coming up against that 27-minute limit, but in the past, we've talked about, or at least I've heard about, a facilities maintenance plan. Like all schools are required to have a facilities plan. I've never seen it. I don't know if we've ever really discussed it as a board, but I think what Isaac's talking about is just a way to cast forward and anticipate some of these costs so you can build them into the budget years ahead of time if need be. Right?
well, and I felt like the roof project that's outstanding.
Well, as long as it's still maintained, that's what kind of part of the Fund 46 and that could go to is that roof, so
Yeah, in the near future, that is going to be,
it's gonna be one.
It's something
not the
that-
entire roof, but I
section of
understand,
it,
yeah.
The last section that we haven't done is,
So I'm just wondering, like, if that's something that, I don't know, where that's all kept as far as a list of those and costs for those in the future, but
I'll look it up.
something be worth just, when we're looking at, the reason just the capital projects, and you mentioned that there's nothing planned, but it just seems like there's probably stuff that we need to be planning for, at least have some visibility to.
Yeah, what I said not planned, I did mean just for this fiscal year.
Yep.
Nothing that I was aware of for this fiscal year, but yes, those are projects that will come down.
Yeah.
Does that document exist? What Isaac's list of future needs, maintenance needs, or what is this facilities management or maintenance plan? I
That
remember.
might be something that DJ might have, perhaps?
If you did Kickapoo did the cost savings one for the lights and this stuff, right? I thought to get that money, you had to have a plan to go with it.
The energy efficiency
Yes.
plan? Yes, we did that
And I
several
thought-
years ago.
And
Oh, you mean a future plan besides just that project?
yes, it had, I thought it was all together because
Maybe some
from the other
future-
place that I sometimes go to there, I know we've talked about that and there's a plan, and I thought it was linked somehow.
I'll do some digging,
All right.
figure it out.
There's probably something for the committee, but
Building
Yeah.
around.
building and grounds
I'll
committee,
do digging around and bring it, and then we can go through it.
Any
Maybe
other-
part of Fund 46, to set that up.
but it makes sense.
you gotta have something for Fund 46, what you were gonna
Possibly use it.
possibly use, and not, actually,
Right,
to
just
start with,
yeah.
but you could use it for something else, but
Yeah.
just to set up, you had, and that was the roof project, Elton Lang, so I would
Set up. the-
set up Fund 46, it's a fair amount of years old already, because one school board convention went to, they brought it, talked about it, and I think it took us a couple of years to actually get it up and going, because you had to kind of have a plan of where you could utilize that money if you throw it in there, because I think if you got any extra, you can throw it in there at the end of the year, am I right? Yeah.
And then you write it on it.
So that's why.
There's one other piece of the budget in your packet, it was kind of a handout, it's just the proposed property tax levy, and then it shows the prior years as well, just so you have a breakdown of what that number is made up of. That you see in the budget.
Melissa, just a couple of questions as I was going through this. Under state sources, well, it's 620, state aid general. I'm just looking at kind of the year-to-year changes, and 2 years ago, 3.2 million.
That is dependent on a lot of things. That's dependent on your membership, it's dependent on, I think it's dependent on the whole state's property valuation. There's a lot of little factors in there, and that's that number we're waiting for on October 15th. How much you spend the year before, how much other schools spend the year before, it all comes into play. It's all in some formula DPI magically turns into a number for us. So we give them information, little data points. The state gives them data points, like the Department of Revenue with the property valuations, and then DPI runs it through all their calculations and determines how much each school district is going to get. It also varies depending on how property wealthy you are. The more property wealthy you are, the less state aid you get. The less property wealth you have in your district, the more state aid you should get. To make everybody equal.
Yeah. So last month we talked about how property valuations have really gone up in a lot of the townships, so that's gonna.
We did get our final number. It was, it went up 22.74%. Last year, they went up 21.08% in our district.
So.
We had like 3 townships that must have had pretty strong, when they were reassessed, they had pretty good bumps.
Yeah, Sylvan was reassessed and everybody's went up.
I think Forest and Bloom were some of the other ones.
So along the lines.
Next year, don't be.
Is Bloom next year?
Yeah, that's what we found out at our meeting last night, next year, because.
And that's the metric they use in part to determine that number, so we're gonna get less money because our valuation went up.
It's kind of the way I understand it working.
That sucks. But,
And declining enrollment has an impact on all that stuff too.
oh yeah. But that variation, like even though last year's numbers aren't audited yet, we went up over 200,000, now we're dropping 1,000 in next year's budget, so it's.
Yeah, and Sandy and I looked at that really carefully when we were going back through the Baird model over the last couple of weeks to make sure that the Baird model was calculating out based on as good data as we could get in. So that number is a number I anticipate will change, but I don't anticipate it's going to change a lot between now and when we certify the levy. Because we'll have that number Friday.
And then what was just a little bit below that 730, the DPI special project grants?
Yep. So
Last year, was that ESSER funds, that big?
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we still have some ESSER funds, but significantly less than we were using last year.
So, I mean, that's telling to me, and it's why schools that, decided to invest ESSER funds into permanent programs or positions are probably really regretting it. If you look at the next page, the total revenues and other financing sources, I mean, we had $500,000 more last year than projected this year, right? Because of the ESSER funds, so we'd really be hurting if we had not done the wise thing, I think.
Well, and we also got that significant bump in Title I, which falls into that total overall this year as well. So yes, we have a lot less ESSER funds this year, but we have some extra, what was it, like 117,000? Say extra in Title I that we were given this year over last year. So if you look at the 750, you can see a difference there, the 221,000 from last year to 375,000 this year. in revenues.
And I was doing my darndest to keep up with you, but you're
I'm
so
sorry.
full of important information. I was struggling. If you look on the last page, Total revenues, right in the middle, total revenues and other financing sources. For the current year, on the right column there's nothing budgeted. What,
Which,
well, like,
under food service or
200.
capital projects?
no, support services, 200,000, right in the middle of the page.
Oh, that's under the capital projects funds, the 41, 46, 48, 49 header, correct?
Yep,
Okay, yep, so we don't have anything budgeted there because we don't have any planned projects.
oh, sure, yep,
for-
that makes
for those
sense.
funds.
Yep, yep, yep. So this is essentially what'll go to the public.
This is going to be very, very close to what we bring to the annual meeting.
Okay.
Like I said, we're still waiting for that final piece from the state that we'll get this Friday. But we have the property evaluations, we have the third Friday counts, so we just need that last piece of the puzzle.
Any other comments? Then I'll ask for a motion to approve the 23-24 preliminary budget.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Earl, second by Rich to approve, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The next item is an extension of a discussion we had last month, or maybe parts of the last two board meetings. I think, Marla, you printed this out for everybody, so I got some copies of, other folks don't have these, but we had a discussion, and Isaac had a couple good comments in the past about our current committees and whether or not we're optimizing the value of what the committees can contribute to board decisions and the functioning of the school, etc. And the discussion last month, I had taken a bunch of notes and I tried to boil it down into this table. I guess there's a couple ways to proceed. I think what would be nice tonight, at least, is to finalize the committees that we think are most beneficial. So we have a final set of committees. And if we can populate them with members tonight, that'd be great. Or if you guys want to take a month to think about it, I don't think we have any real pressing committee matters in the next few weeks, but I'll just really quickly step down through these. If you guys remember things the same, fine. If you have any thoughts or memories from our discussion that differ from what I mentioned, that's awesome too. But Building Grounds Transportation Committee, currently manned by Earl, Bo, and Isaac. No changes recommended. That committee's doing good work. Negotiations and Handbook Committee, currently myself, Rich, and Janet. That committee's doing good work. However, I mentioned that I'm going to be stepping down. Given that my lovely spouse works here, I rightly shouldn't be voting on anything related to staff compensation, etc. But somebody will have to step into that void as a result. So, is anybody really excited, interested in serving on that committee? Again, we can, once we get the final committee list, we can take a month and you guys can all think about it. And we can do some communicating via email before we finalize membership again next month. The Personnel Committee, we decided to disband or dissolve with the understanding that as appointments committees are pulled together to fill vacancies, individual board members can serve on those committees at the discretion of themselves and the administration. The Policy Committee, we had a discussion, and I think this would be a good change, to add some legislative review or affairs responsibility to that committee. Like Melissa just led us through a discussion of the budget. And the money we have to spend on building staff programs is largely dependent on what the legislature gives us every year. And that you're stepping into that political realm where the air gets thin and you start to gasp, and it's not a really healthy place to spend a lot of time. But groups like this, rather than just reacting to what the legislature decides and what they give us, we could have a voice. We could understand pieces of legislation, assembly bills, senate bills, as they're moving through the legislature, meet, discuss, come up with some ideas, some recommendations, communicate with our legislators, join forces through CISA, whatever, with other school boards to really have a voice and try to steer the future of public school funding and other policy-related things. But at any rate, that was the recommendation, essentially keeping that committee but broadening it from just a group that looks at our own policies and updates them annually in response to the Neola group we work with, but also starts tracking what's happening in the state capitol with regards to any pending legislation that influences our operations here. And then the expense review, we decided to keep that committee, but maybe rename it and change it to more of a finance committee with a broader mandate, and that is to work closely with the business administrator, with Kim, to really understand how money comes and goes through the school, rather than, you know, reviewing expenses each month. Expenses, the way I understand it, I think our discussion would stay in the packet, but the board would review them at the beginning of every meeting rather than the committee. And those are the standing committees. Is everybody remembering things similarly?
Yes.
Then there was Kim at the retreat, I guess, initiated, I think, what could be a really meaningful and engaging discussion about our mission and our core values, that at that point we decided to convene an ad hoc committee around so we can continue those discussions. And as I talked with Kim, a mission statement, core values aren't really meaningful unless you build your programs, your staffing, you make your dollars flow in ways that support that mission and those core values. So on the tail end of development of a mission statement and core values would likely be some sort of planning, strategic planning, nobody likes that phrase, but some process that decides how we can best achieve that mission, whatever it becomes. But at any rate, at this point, we had decided that formation of that ad hoc committee would be good. So in terms of that list of committees, and at least in general, what they're intended to focus on, everybody copacetic, or?
I think so.
Then the next question would be, do we want to spend time now deciding who's on what committee? A couple of them don't necessarily change unless somebody on those committees, one of those committees like negotiations and handbook, building and grounds, says, oh, there's now a finance, I really want to get on that committee. It might lead to some shuffling around. Would you like to take the next few weeks to think about it? We can maybe share some emails. Or you want to do it now? It doesn't.
Well. So, I mean, do we need to make a motion to just kind of reform the committees as described as a first step, and then just try to get people assigned to each committee? Is that what we're trying to do here?
That would be good. Maybe tonight that's our end goal. Is just to approve the list of committees, and then we can, I'll send out an email and ask for folks to.
That's a good way.
Yeah, we'll just go that route.
What is your thought process to completely like wipe the slate and completely redo the committees, or like you said, the buildings and grounds has 3 people, obviously need a new one for negotiations, the policy committee has 3 people. I mean, what was your thought process?
I guess it makes sense to kind of, well, I don't know. I guess I hadn't thought all the way through that, Rich, but there's really just a couple newish committees.
Yeah,
But with the ad hoc committee, that's,
and we're dissolving one, so.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, yes, maybe as a first step, I'd make a motion to accept the kind of reconfiguration of committees as you've outlined.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, a motion by Isaac, second by Earl.
Rich.
Sorry.
Each have 4 letters.
Second by Rich to approve the new list of standing committees. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so we've got a slightly different, it's largely the same committees with one disbanded and a couple sort of retooled a bit to expand their roles.
So then, I mean, because Janet's not here, so it'd be nice to just, you know, do we all just maybe send our preferences to, or interest in committees to you again, Scott, and let you kind of reshuffle the deck and discuss at our next meeting?
Yeah, I guess I think that makes the most sense. Even though a couple of the committees aren't really touched with the other committees, maybe somebody will decide that. Yeah. All right, so let's do that. I'll send an email out here in the next couple weeks.
You probably ping Janet, because, she
Yeah.
knows that's coming.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
All right, I'm excited by that. I think the engagement with the legislative side of things and sort of a broader, like you mentioned, Isaac, the broader responsibilities with related to the school budget, things are gonna be beneficial. And I'll include that ad hoc committee, but it's not a standing committee, so it's like an extra, it's like, those are usually viewed ad hoc committees as extra work. We've got a new opportunity to provide input, so. But I did list a couple other committee-related issues at the bottom there that popped up during discussion. And Rich, you emailed me about this, and I agree that, you know, the committees, and this is not true just here, but anywhere, they can sort of become, you know, a periodic engagement by the members where they show up to the meetings, they discuss, and they move on. But that has put a lot of responsibility, and I don't know how time-consuming it is, but essentially, Kim and Marla then coordinate all the committee activities, even if it's just typing up an agenda and posting it, et cetera. And Rich's comment was a good one, and I agree that the chairs, to the extent they can, of course, the administration, Kim in this case, is gonna really be knowledgeable about what the issues that have to be addressed and when are, but the chairs should try to, as much as they can, be in communication with Kim and take as much of the work off her plate as possible, and Marla's plate. All right.
Yeah, that's my thought. I mean, if you're the chair, you might as well be involved and try to help run it besides just showing up and talking and making a decision at the end.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then the second point was, it struck me that, and I've got one of these new committees and a single person in mind, I won't say who, but there are members of the community that may have experience or knowledge or interest or passion related to school budgets, legislative issues related to public education, et cetera. So I think it'd be nice to allow them to participate as what's usually called an ex officio member. So they attend meetings and they're free to discuss and provide input and help steer recommendations, but they're not a member of the school board. I would like to offer, you know, specific community members that opportunity.
So is that different than just, because all the committees are open to the public, right, the community meetings? So, I mean, I think the format of that though is they have like the same kind of rules of kind of speaking before a meeting but not necessarily participating in, or how does that change from what's allowed today?
Yeah, I guess the way I'm viewing it is they would be right at the table. They'd be a member of the committee, an ex officio member.
They actually can vote on anything that you do discuss.
Yeah.
Go vote on, because I mean, at some point,
I mean, you, instead of just taking their comment, listening to it, they actually, anyway, with what for the meat animal sale committee, we got one that they actually have got to vote in what we do decide for the committee.
Yeah.
That's the way ours set up with that, but.
In the past, that's the way I've usually seen it, they have voting rights. In some cases, they almost serve as consultants, like they've got some expertise that the committee wants to draw from, but they're not a voting member. It's just an idea, but I know there are folks out there in the community that could really provide us some good input and insight.
yeah. I don't have any concerns with having somebody that's, if they're interested. I think the concern might just be like, what decision-making power do we give that committee, and then is that something that the board needs to just approve, you know, that level of participation versus just typical community participation? I don't really know. It's just, I can see that becoming a bit of a quagmire depending on what you're getting into. Especially if there's something that's more controversial than other things.
Well, and how do you pick the person?
Yeah.
So you pick one person and 10 other people are like, well, I want to participate too, and then you should quickly become, we just have to have processes in place that how that fairly occurs.
It's a good point. I would think they would have to, like any volunteer coach, they'd have to be approved by the board as an ex officio member of whatever committee they're being recommended for. But you're right, there should be some process, I guess, in our policy manual under committees that discusses that, and maybe there's something in there already, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so about this.
Well, I just throw it out there as an idea. The concerns are good ones, and there are things we're gonna have to, if we go that route, which I would like to, again, I've got a couple people in mind that I know have a lot of knowledge about some of these types of things, so we can address those maybe as we
Yeah, I mean,
go forward.
I think it's a good idea, and it'd be great if the community participation in any of these things, if there's people that have thoughts or ideas that would add to it. Yeah, I just think if it becomes to the point where we're giving somebody a decision-making voice, that needs to come before the board and be discussed. So
Yep.
that would be my thought.
Agreed. But just to clarify, their role would be greater than just a public attendee at any of these meetings?
Well, yeah, I think that's what we're saying. If it's a public attendee, that's already in place, right? There's a process for that. But if it's more than that, I think it needs to be just something that's discussed here and decided.
Yep. All right, so I think we can move on.
Yeah.
Expect an email from me here in the next few weeks, and we'll repopulate our new committees at the November meeting. And the last item then on the action agenda, the E-rate consultant. Kim, you want to
Sure.
explain that?
So we would like to hire an E-rate consultant. Currently, Jen Melfi performs this duty, but it has become a little overwhelming as she tries to do everything else with her role and as social media. And she has concerns that she will miss some of the different forms or the deadlines. So often, schools are hiring an E-rate consultant, and they are responsible, they are experts in this field, and are able to complete this process very effectively. They are paid about 10% of the reimbursed funds that we receive. So I guess we would just like to be able to hire an E-rate consultant and take this duty off of Jen's plate, and just be sure that we are getting all the money that's out there for us to collect from these different fund sources.
What is E-rate? I guess I'm showing my ignorance here.
Yeah, no, I wasn't quite sure either.
Just like a mad consultant.
Has something to do with our technology and our service providers, and we can go in and apply for,
Oh, for like discounts for the school
Yes.
and all, yeah, okay.
So they get paid more if they get us more refunds essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
Makes sense to me.
right,
Good deal.
yeah.
It's basically a grant writer position, but within a narrow.
Yeah, I suppose.
Do you know of any schools, probably larger schools, but do any contract with a grant writer to?
No, CISA has a grant writer, but I don't know. I think sometimes schools take on their own.
I guess I'd make a motion to accept the E-rate consultant as proposed.
I'll second it.
Motion by Isaac, second by Bo to approve the E-rate consultant. All in favor? Aye, opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to the end of the action agenda, and the first item on the informational agenda. A couple discussion items, beginning with COVID practices.
So COVID practices are on here because we've had 2 cases, and we've followed our last year's plan, which is to stay home for 5 days, and then you can come to school and be masked for 5 days, and these 5 days are taken off their sick leave. We kind of sought out what other schools are moving forward with doing, and some are going back to the stay home when you're sick, 24 hours fever-free before you can come back to school. So wanted to get, Nurse Trish actually wants guidance on how to work with families and staff members when they're contracting COVID.
And this is for kids and
Yes.
workers.
This would be, yeah, anyone associated with Kickapoo then. If you test and you have COVID, then you have to stay home 5 days, and then you can come back and you have to mask 5 days.
But does she have any like guidance or recommendations that she's hearing? Because I know where I work, 2 people had COVID, and yeah, so I think the doctor told me can't go to work for 5 days, but then when they came back to work, no one was wearing masks, right? I mean, it's kind of the 5 days of whatever, and then, because I don't think, it seems like the government's not tracking anything or providing any guidance or doing anything.
No. And I think that's what she said, and in seeking out what others, are doing with their schools, they said too, they don't really have a lot of guidance elsewhere, so we listed some of the different things that they were doing, and it kind of varies.
But is there anybody she can contact, I'm assuming these people who got COVID, their doctor told them you have to stay home 5 days, can't go to work.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's a work policy, because they wouldn't even have to tell people they had COVID. So I wonder, can she contact somebody, just ask what the recommendation is? And I
That's
guess
like county or
I
school
don't-
recommendation?
I think that's probably her struggle, is that I don't think anybody
No one
wants
has
to,
anything?
nobody wants to give any
Nobody has it,
recommendations.
because
Or has one, really.
they're saying people won't test either,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
because,
Because they don't want to miss.
no.
So, I looked up the DHS recommendations yesterday, just to see where the state is at. And it's different than it was a year and a half ago. They've backed way off.
Oh, yeah.
The recommendations are basically stay home if you're not feeling well,
Yeah.
which I was told in 3rd grade
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do.
a long time ago anyway. But they did have the 5 +5 stay home for 5 days, mask for 5 days, recommendation. But I also looked up it's almost like we went through this bottleneck, and we're out here in what seems like a normal world, but there's still these echoes of guidelines from the COVID era. So I looked up the trends in hospitalizations, and which was one of the things toward the end of COVID they were focusing on, and ICU patients, and that they're, in both, of course, there was this huge mountainous climb in 2021, but now it's just a flat line. Nobody's masking, or very few people are masking. We're back to a normal day-to-day life, and still hospitalizations due to COVID are almost nil. So in my mind, we're back to, I don't want to be too cavalier because it's still a health concern, but it's a virus. We've had viruses, flus, etc. We know the educational effects of distance learning, and even if it's just 5 days, that's, there's going to be some effect setting that kid in. I guess my recommendation is to be a little more liberal at this point and, stay home if you're sick. Stay home 24 hours past the end of any flu or flu-like symptoms, and then come back to school.
Yeah, good, because like Kim said, you're sick, I'm not gonna take a test.
Right.
So, there's no way to.
Because when it was bad, and you had to test to be able to come back to
Right.
school.
You had to have a test, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a
But we don't
test
have
anymore.
to do that anymore.
Okay.
But what did you think? Well, what did you?
I thought that was the easiest, the clearest message to families and I believe something that would be easier to follow.
Yeah,
With
you would hope.
consistency.
Hope families will care about other people and do the right thing, like you said with
Yeah.
other viruses. 24 hours after your fever's gone, and
So in terms of codifying that sort of recommendation, looking at last year's policy, it would be essentially the last 4 things are still in place. We still have improved ventilation, we still would recommend hand washing and cleaning surfaces, but maybe more specific. If we want to be specific, and get rid of that last sentence, the test is required for them to return to school, but stay home for 24 hours past the fever, flu-like symptoms.
That's kind of back to where we were.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
so we can vote on that then next month? Or is it just?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, no, I don't know, I'm just asking.
It's on the informational agenda, so.
Oh.
Or, I guess we should vote on it next month, shouldn't we? Because we voted on that policy. So that stands until we vote to do something else, so. I guess, after this discussion, I would feel free to tell Trish this is what's coming next month, so.
Right,
that's-
so she knows.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, next, possible snow days.
Okay, so I wanted to briefly talk about snow days, just to have an idea about what to expect and to kind of get you thinking about some different ideas. So we have our 2 snow days built in, and from that point on, we haven't really clarified how we wanted to make up our snow days. I did survey the staff to find out what their preference was, and 67.7% would choose a virtual day. And 32% said choosing 2 different ways would be fine with them, like, do the virtual and then add a day at the end of the year, but don't go into the following week. It was kind of what their preference was. But I have another thought that I want you to consider, and we obviously don't, we're not gonna make any decisions tonight. The whole point is just to think about the meeting, moving forward, and how we wanna treat, should we have more than 2 snow days? So I did send, there's a form that you can fill out online, and it calculates your number of hours, because there are required hours for the different grade levels of students. And we are well over our hours. And I have sent it in just to confirm with DPI that I put the form together correctly and it's accurate. And I'm pretty sure it is. So we're required for 1,137 hours for our grades 7 through 12. And then it goes drastically lower. 1,050 for grades K through 6. And then half-day kindergarten is 437 hours. So I just basically took that last because that's the most hours that are required. Right now we have 1,218 hours of instruction, so that gives us several extra days, which you obviously want a padding. I'm not saying that, but I would like to consider, so we have our 2 days built in, and we still have additional days, that there might be a consideration, should we have a lot more, depending on the number of days, that we would forgive those days for the students, and just continue to contract with the teachers that they would be required to work that day, because there's a lot of work to do between grading papers, doing some data analysis, researching and understanding AI at a level that they can use it in their instruction. The reason I was totally going along with, virtual day and what that would look like. And I started thinking about the whole purpose, and if we're just checking boxes to say, we're scheduled for this many days, we have a snow day, we really need to make that day up. So we would fill it in with a virtual day, or we put it in at the end of the day, or take a vacation day away, which we don't really have too many vacation or spring break, but is there more benefits in today's world to just give our kids a snow day? To just give them that mental health day, to not have to worry about logging on to instruction, or at the end of the year when the instruction isn't quality, that last few days of school, bringing them back in. Does the mental health break where they just get to play and be a kid? There's a lot of research behind that they're trying to bring forward now about bringing back the old-fashioned snow day, where kids aren't required to be accountable that day, that's just a surprise day that they just get off and they just get to be. When I think about the makeup of our population right now and the mental health that is very evident, I just started wondering if that would be a better way to meet the needs of our students, and then also meet the needs of our staff by giving them time to work, time to meet with their colleagues and talk about students, and solving some of the issues that we have in education right now. Also, we really do need to try to figure out more about this artificial intelligence. They were just saying that by the year 2035, artificial intelligence will take over like 40% of the workforce, and that's mainly going to be our lower income students who are going to be impacted by that. So really getting ahead of how AI can benefit not only our teaching staff, but the students as well. So just wanted to put thoughts in your head about, should we have more than 2 snow days? We haven't declared how we want to respond to that. So there you have, from the teacher's perspective, they would prefer to do a virtual day, 67.7%. And also just consider the decision and how we can best impact the students
But did you discuss this other option with them?
with the staff.
Just a snow day?
No.
What you're saying, yeah, so they'd probably all vote for that.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but
That thought came
for the
after.
reasons that you said. But is your thought that, so you talked, 2 days are planned, if an extra one, a virtual day, if another extra one, then at the end of the thing, so are you talking those 2 to make 4 snow days being forgiven? And then after that, having to figure out something else, or?
Yes. I was thinking along that line, yes. So we'll have 2 in those days, and then there's plenty of hours that they will get their instruction.
Yep.
But it's days that we have determined are our school days. So they'd have to be forgiven by you to say 2 more days. If we have a lot more than that, then yeah,
We'd have to figure something
we
else
would,
out.
yeah.
I've never understood why we only have 2 snow days when we live in Wisconsin anyway. You know what I mean?
El
Like-
Nino this year, it's not gonna snow.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, sure.
so-
I mean, I'm
And
more than
that's-
happy with that, but.
I can tell you, in 2002, we didn't use them.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
1996,
DeSoto has
we
So
did-
then do they get out of school 2 days early? You know, like,
So I'm really glad you provided those hours of instruction. I had always assumed when we had these discussions in the past that we only had two snow days. Anything beyond that, we were dropping below some state threshold of hours of instruction, and we couldn't, but you're saying we've actually got some freeboard.
We're, yeah.
And what is that
We've got
difference
room.
between the middle school, high school number of hours and the hours of instruction we currently have? Is it?
So we currently have 1,218 hours, and what's required is 1,137.
So we've got
That's a lot of days.
80.
Yeah. It's like 10.
for the, that's for the high
But then you
school?
take the 2 that we built in.
So still, are you talking, what is a school day, 7 hours? I don't know what the kids are.
So, yeah, it's 7 hours for, because we go 8 to 3:20 for middle school, high school, and we go 8 to 3:15 for elementary. And you have to subtract a half hour for lunch, and you can provide 30 minutes of recess for your kids today, and anything over that, you have to subtract that time. So I subtracted that. We have 4 early releases. So of course that goes into your minutes, and we'd want a padding for that too, should we have late starts. And you cannot count parent-teacher conference days, but I only took 1 day off of that because we teach all day and then conference at night, and then actually teach half a day or till 1. So those were kind of bonus minutes there. But yeah, there's time to play with.
I think the other part though, and we do have time to play with, but I think part of the conversation that's always made this more difficult is the hourly employees.
Oh,
That's always been the caveat within this, that just on the simple, I totally agree with Kim, that's always been the back end, is all of the hourly employees then who are counting on that check when we don't have school and it's not forgiven, then there's that component.
But if we counted it as a work day,
Yes,
Like
I'm
they
saying if we
would be-
did that, but in the past, I mean, it's been,
So there's certainly professional development that could be done by cooks, any of these hourly employees, right? They could review the nutrition schedule or the new guidance, right? So they're still getting paid like teachers, maybe?
I mean, probably the more difficult might be kitchen staff, but we could be creative to think about what they could do. I mean, they're working on the greenhouse, the farm to school.
Yeah.
and we have offered them to come in custodial, or, there's been options within that too.
But yeah, the rest of the staff should be, well.
I really like that idea. From the teacher perspective too, learning about AI is great, but I don't sit around talking to teachers about teaching all the time, but I know I've had discussions with staff here, and one of the things they say is, there's no prep time. So a day where they could
Right.
get ahead, do that reading they wanted to do, get their grading, whatever.
Yeah,
I
there's
think
a
it's
lot
great
coming
idea.
down, you know, there's a lot with the science reading, talking about science and math, and he's doing a lot of work with MTSS, with behaviors. There's reading the data.
Well, the time will
here
get
in
used,
state.
even if you don't use it on the
Yeah,
snow
I
day,
mean-
if you took 2 days and coming in June, before the end of the year, where you can set it up and
Teachers
actually.
to work, they would welcome that, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
And it's just, I don't know if it would prevent a little bit of burnout too, you know, with
Well, I will,
having work time.
whatever we decide, I don't think it was a good look last year that we were gonna go virtual, and then we didn't go virtual, and then there was confusion there, and then whatever, I think it's best as a unified front for whatever you decide that we kind of go with it and stick with it. Because like I sent an email out to parents last year saying, we got our computer, when we had that goofy snow day in April, whenever it was, and then it turned around and we got another email and said, we're not doing it. Well, then parents were like, well, you guys know what you're doing? I don't know, maybe. But I think that consistency is important.
Yeah,
Just from the
and I
top
think
down.
that's the feedback I got from the staff too.
I don't feel like they,
And they
the
did
kids
not
get,
want to add minutes.
the kids don't get a whole lot from a virtual day anyway.
Well, they get,
I mean,
I think they get more out of, well, it's with 5th grade. I thought we got more out of the virtual day than adding another day in the end of June. Because then that's like herding cats.
yeah,
Yeah.
but the virtual day we did have last year with I had a 2nd grader last year then, and they had to meet in the morning to meet with,
Yeah.
to go over what they had to do for the day, and then that was it. So if
And
they
it's
did it,
easy.
they did it. If they didn't, they didn't, but, you know what I mean, like,
It's easier for parents too, I'm sure, if you just are,
Wasn't there,
there's an excitement with a snow day.
oh yeah,
yeah, because
wasn't there a period of time where we were adding minutes to each day?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, we did that.
We
the
did
last-
that.
I think we've done what every element that.
Yeah, because we didn't get out last year till like 3:30, or
Yeah.
3:25. We added 10 minutes, didn't we?
Yeah,
We
So-
did, and
In
I
January, I
had strong emotions to not do that. That's what they commented, please don't add minutes to the day. It's,
yeah, I can't see that as very beneficial.
well, yeah, lots of kids have other things that they do that they miss out on, or have to leave early anyway, right?
Yeah,
Like
you leave for
dance
track
and
and-
gymnastics and sports
Yeah.
and.
yeah. So anyway, we're not having a snow day anytime soon, but I just wanted some thoughts in your head to think about.
Don't
I
jinx
just
us.
jinxed us, didn't I?
So I really like the way you presented that from a mental health perspective, I remember snow days. It was, in those years, it was a snow day. You were out in the woods doing something, building snow forts
Yeah,
or swinging.
which is really healthy for you.
Mhm. And from the teacher perspective, it's a chance to do the research, catch up on the latest, do the grading. I think it's a good idea. I guess that you still need to know when that.
Yeah, we need to know so we're not in trouble there, and I will make sure that everything I've done is confirmed with DPI so that we'll know exactly how many days we're
Yeah,
safe and what we need to.
that's exactly.
But, I mean, it looks like we have quite a few to play with.
So if we have a blizzard during a school board Wednesday where we can't meet, do I still get paid?
Absolutely.
All
I
right,
mean, if you
so
do professional development, it helps.
Get paid by the contract, it's not a per diem.
so you'll bring that back next month for,
Yep.
very good, thanks, Kim. All right, item 8B, scheduled meetings. Annual meeting on the 25th, when is what's the date of the November school board?
Already on my calendar.
8th or 9th.
Yeah.
November
Should be
8th.
8th.
8th is, November 8th is Wednesday. I got one on that day.
Yes.
November 8th.
November
Ooh,
8th.
that's conferences. Doesn't matter, just count.
That's what, Andy?
Parent-teacher conferences.
That does,
Oh, yeah, it is. isn't
It
is
is,
that problematic?
Should
No.
be.
I don't think so.
shouldn't be.
You have time to check on Reagan.
I think I will.
Any committee meetings that need to?
We need to have policy. We have policy approval 32.2.
So
Who's
that's
policy?
Rich, Janet, and Peggy. Right.
I think so. So, I can, since Janet's gone, I can just coordinate with Peggy and Janet. And then, but is this like, need to be this week or next week? I mean, but just needs to happen, okay. So since she's gone, I'll email these two and get you a date. Well,
Perfect.
some dates, and then if it works for you guys, we'll.
And moving on to the superintendent performance evaluation, we've talked about this a couple of times in the last month. We had talked about having a draft ready for you guys this month, but I came in, I don't know, a week ago or so and talked to Kim about this, and she, because she's Kim, has a stack of information related to superintendent performance evaluations on her desk, and last time we talked about it, I said, you want another month? So we got nothing, there's no draft. But we did identify the 3 goals, 2 of which we talked about last time: communication, the financial health. I can't remember exactly how we phrased it, but Isaac, you brought it up that, a goal for the district administrator should be ensuring the financial health of the institution. Then we identified a 3rd one when we were sitting the other day, and I can't remember what it was now, but Kim's identified some goals for herself. To bring all that home, we'll have a draft next month for you guys to review. And the quarterly budget report.
Not much to see here because it was just the first quarter, but I'm sure there's one thing that probably caught people's eyes up in the first section, that negative 6,000 in revenue in Fund 27. That is not a mistake. What it is we had a bit of a delay getting some accounts receivable from last fiscal year and being able to file an ESSER claim because of some holdups with DPI. So that is a Fund 27 prior year revenue that was booked as a receivable. Or I mean, it was 2023 receivable. Those journal entries reversed in August because we should have had the revenue by then. So that's why it shows as a negative, because when it reversed but the revenue hadn't actually come in, there was nothing to put against it. So that'll be fixed. Sandy was finally able to get things worked out with DPI so that the claims will be filed, so that won't be there next time. You do see a big loss there in the fiscal year-to-date activity in the first section, and that is because we are paying bills and paying people, but haven't really started receiving any money yet. And that's typical for the cycle of the way school finance works. We don't really start getting our money until later in the fiscal year, October, November. Then we get quite a bit in January and February when the taxes start coming in, and we get our big payment of equalization aid actually doesn't come until June. So those kind of trail. The expenses are always ahead of the revenues at the beginning of the year. And other than that, I don't think there's anything real striking on it. You'll see down in the insurance expense summary that we've expended like 91% of our budget there. And that is because we pay our insurance premiums in July each year. So all our liability, our property, our auto insurance gets paid in July for the year. So, and workers' comp insurance. So that's very typical. You'll see that pretty much every year. The only other thing that might catch your eye is down at the very end on the second page, food service, also showing a big loss. And that's for the same reasons as we talked about a moment ago. We're paying people and we're buying food, but I just filed the September food service claims with the government, so we haven't received any like lunch funds or breakfast reimbursement funds back yet. So that will get better as the year progresses. We just have to have all the food up front, you know, to feed the kids, and we have to start paying our kitchen staff. So that's also a typical early fiscal year loss you're showing. And then, yeah, if you don't have any questions, that's all I've got.
The way I always look at these, and when you see these quarterly budgets, like, we're 25% of the way through the fiscal year, right? So anything where we've spent more than 25% draws my attention. Anything that's way under draws my attention. And it looks like most of these we're okay, right? You pointed out the ones and explained the items where we're, you know, that look like we're spending beyond our means, but
Right.
beyond that, we're at, you know, 9%, 5%, 16%, 18%. And I know expenses aren't consistent throughout the year, so it's not, but I think it looks good. I mean, we're not,
Yeah,
any other comments? All right, last item on the informational agenda then, van purchase.
So Jeff is dealing with Sleepy Hollow about a Suburban, actually. He has not received the MSRP yet, so he can't tell you a price. But he would like to have it on the agenda for next month because the van in use now is not very reliable. And the Suburban would fit 9 people versus the 8 in a van. Staff would not need a CDO to drive the Suburban with students, so it would save, not only do we need to replace the van, but in purchasing the Suburban, then it allows for kind of the smaller groups of kids who need to go places. The staff member can just take them, which saves on busing, using a large bus, and so we're hoping for, I guess, just to make you aware, we were thinking we were gonna have more information, I think, but we're
Better be a good
closer to
price.
purchase.
Too bad we don't know anybody sleeping.
What's the price difference between a Suburban and a van though? I mean, is that a pretty big delta?
The problem with the van is that you couldn't get one that seated more than 7 people. They were not available. So that's why he went with that, and if you go over 10 people, then we're not able to sell it to a school.
Yeah.
I think Jeff also liked that it would be 4-wheel drive. I think that was interesting to him, yeah. But we did have to order it, don't have to take it, so basically I just wanted to, Jeff brought it up to me and we ordered it just to make sure that if we were able to go with it, that we would have it available. So, and there wasn't a price available because it would be a 20.4 model and they didn't release pricing yet. So.
Just thinking like an all-wheel drive, I mean, a smaller all-wheel drive vehicle, you know, you can get seating for 7 or 8, I mean, for probably half the price of a Suburban though, right?
I think we put those numbers to Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my thing, and then like, what's your insurance difference on a Suburban versus a van that's 7 or 8? Is it worth it for one extra person? That's the only thing I'd question.
It's a good point.
And if we, I mean, I guess if we're kind of at that threshold a lot, maybe it's worth the extra money, but I guess it'd be worth knowing
Yeah, I think comparing would be a good idea.
what's your delta.
If he needed the 9 members seats, yeah.
I mean,
How often?
historically, he's got to know about how often he's running into like 9 and needing a bus versus 7 or 8 and not.
Mhm.
It's a good point. All right, moving then to superintendent report.
I was going to share kind of our numbers here. So for the 23-24 school year, we have a total head count of 470 students. And in 22-23, our head count was 471. This year, we have 105 open enrolled in students. Last year, we had 101. Open enrolled out. Last year, we had 51. This year, we have 52 open enrolled out. Our membership, though, for this year is 417. That means the students in our district. Last year, the membership number was 421. But our FTE for this year is 405 because we have to count our 4K students at a 0.6. And last year, our FTE was 411 students we were reimbursed for. So that just gives you an idea of where we're at with enrollment, kind of this year versus last year. Then a few updates on some of the projects. The railings, if you noticed out on the front steps, are still the wooden railings. They are just now in production and are going to be painted soon, so they should be going up, I would hope, within the next month. Things with the pool have been going really well. DJ's working on completing the greenhouse, so that is ready to go for Tina and Jeremy. In the past, we've had a little problem with the heat, and so he's doing some fan flow system that he's able to work himself to make the greenhouse workable for their project. And he's been painting the handicaps outside and putting the flag and the banners up in the gym, so the gym is slowly coming back together. We did find out about the tile in the pool. Virginia Tile suspects that it is how it was installed, because when she did her tests, it wasn't the tile, it's more of the relief in the lines. So that should come under a warranty or insurance claim on construction there. I also attended the superintendent conference in Madison, which was really great to talk to so many different individuals and go to different sessions. I went to some on superintendents who had passed referendums, what they did and what they regretted doing, for those who had failed. This Dr. Danielle also did a really phenomenal presentation on the science of reading, and just interacting with all the different colleagues and learning about where they're at with their districts as far as teachers and keeping their staff, declining enrollment, and of course their need to go to referendum as well. So, an excellent few days, and that's all I have to add this month, unless you have any questions.
The enrollment numbers to me sounded really good, I know. On the open enrollment side, we've been sliding in both ways. Open enroll in was going down, open enroll out was going up, and this year it seems that we've at least leveled off and maybe gained a couple.
We could
Good
gain
job.
more if we could hire another speech teacher.
Yeah.
So if we had another speech teacher, we could bring in a lot more kids.
Moving on then, I think we have principals' reports.
I can go first. Well, little we work our way up. We had Grandparents' Day, well attended by a grandpa that is here. It's nice to see that many, everybody seemed happy and excited. It's hard not to have grandkids, grandparents, and donuts and not have everybody happy. And then we had folks for breakfast.
Crazy to have that many grandkids in school.
You're doing a lot.
After you guys came in for your picture, I know why our enrollment's up. Thank you. And then we had Friday, there was books for breakfast. Lots of parents in here again, so I think we've had I think it's been two really good, I sent an email to the staff, I think it's really good public relations to have that many people in the building in the morning and and the high school kids were down to read to them, and I think that only helps get the word out about KIC. The last couple weeks, or I guess it was last week, there's two kind of groups together. One is on behaviors, and it's me and Ange, or Mrs. Eggy, and Mrs. Stinson, and Erica, and Taylor's been part of it, and Landon. And what we're trying to do is, with some of the behaviors we're seeing, is we're just getting together as a group at least, well, whenever they need it, but monthly, to make sure we are getting them the services they need, and we know where everybody is, if they're in tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, so that we can try to change those behaviors. And then that allows us to communicate more with everybody who works with those kids, and they know exactly what we're trying and what we're doing. And then we're doing the same thing with kids that we're worried about academically. We met on Thursday. That's a different group, but using the data we have and then trying to look at what interventions we're trying and if those are paying off, instead of waiting until December or January for the fast bridge test to try to get that. So we have more, so we can get to them sooner and try things sooner to change the trajectory of some of what our tests were in the fall. And then swimming next week for the next month or so. So everybody will be in here and they'll be in the pool. And that's it.
All right. School start with 4.5 weeks in. So far, it's been a great start. We had homecoming week last week. Kids were great. I think school spirit was awesome. We had better decorating in the past, so I think it's definitely been a good start. If people remember last year, at the end of the year, we changed to 4.5 week grading and not just at the quarter. That's been a real positive. I think it's helped kids a lot more accountable to have a midterm grade rather than waiting with everything until the end. I think it's been a welcome change for the teachers just from a grading perspective of not having things hang out there. So far so good with that change. Today the juniors and seniors went on college visits, so they went to La Crosse, UWL, UW-Eau Claire, the Turbo, and then they went to Western, and then they went to the apprenticeship program. So always a good opportunity for the kids to get out and explore and see some opportunities where to go. This Friday we have Joellen Eggy coming from the Vernon County Sheriff's Department. She's an investigator. We've had her come before. She'll talk about appropriate social media use and just kind of some trends and law enforcement and things for kids to be aware of, just to know.
She's gonna take 3rd, 4th, and 5th too.
Okay, all right. And other than that, getting into the element of starting evaluations with teachers and working on that with their goals and SLOs for the years. And test scores just came in yesterday, so that'll be part of what Andy and I will share at next month's board report. So that's what I have. If anybody has any questions.
The test scores are from like what, the first week?
From last year.
Oh,
Last year's, yep. So last year's test scores.
We have to wait for her to get the
Yeah,
results. You take them
They
in.
embargo them for a long time until they're out public, so.
Can I make a request when you present the scores? I really like looking at those scores. I think there's a lot of meaning, but I don't have a context. Like Andy mentioned Fastbridge. I don't really know what Fastbridge is, except it shows up as a test that's given. So maybe like even a 5-minute background that we administer the Fastbridge, which is produced by these smart people, and we give it to these grades, and it assesses this. You know what I mean? Because I hear forward exam and Fastbridge, and I don't really know what all that means. honestly.
Okay, so basically kind of which tests at which grade levels and that type of thing,
Yeah.
explanation.
Just-
Okay.
A little context.
All right. Anything else? The one thing we did take off was last year it got confusing. If you remember, we had the conference rank and then we had the prior year conference rank. We eliminated that just because I think it created more questions than, is everybody good with that? It just seemed like it created more questions. Other than that, I don't think there was anything else. If you remember, we basically had all the test scores by the conference. And then we would just basically go over the score on the report card, because basically the test scores that we'll go over pretty much sums up that element to it. But if there is anything anybody thinks of, just shoot in your email and let us know.
Very good. I think that takes us right down to closed session. I'll entertain a motion to enter closed session. Considering tonight's goal, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which a governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. The purpose is winter coaching positions.
I'll make a motion to convene the closed session.
I'll second that.
Motion by Earl, second by Peggy to enter closed session. I think we need a roll call for
Isaac Wallace.
Yes.
Rich Gannon.
Yes.
Peggy McCormick.
Yes.
Will Schrader.
Yes.
Earl Wallace.
Yes.
And Scott Walton.
yes.